Welcome to my talk, The Bitcoin Journey. As Daniel just said, I'm Gigi. I go by the name of their Gigi online. And as Daniel also mentioned, I choose to not show my face online. I'm one of the pseudonymous Bitcoiners. That's also why I decided to wear my best Hodlin Out outfit for this conference, because Hodlin Out is a very prominent Bitcoiner. There's a history behind it that in essence, we're not only all Bitcoiners, but we are all Hodlin Out. And I want to keep this kind of pseudonymous and weird aspect of Bitcoin. That's why I choose to talk here before you as Hodlin Out as well. So I'm going to talk about two things, two aspects of the Bitcoin journey. First of all, what does it mean to become a Bitcoiner, and how does the Bitcoin journey look like? Stefan and Daniel just talked about it, how their Bitcoin journey looked like and how they discovered Bitcoin, and that it is a multi-year process to really understand Bitcoin and understand money and understand the societal impacts and understand what this technology might change and what is yet to come. But I will also talk about the journey that Bitcoin is currently on. So I will talk about the cyclical nature of Bitcoin and how I believe it also relates to a personal journey that a Bitcoiner might go through. So part one, a Bitcoiner's journey. So getting into Bitcoin, while it's different for all people, I think you can generalize to say that in general, your first response is like, this will never work. in general, I think that's right. That definitely was my response as well. So the first time I heard about Bitcoin, I completely dismissed it. And I was like, this will never work, all you nerds. And mind you, I was one of those nerds. I was like, just have fun with your funny internet money and it will be hacked at one point in time and it will just never work. And then maybe a couple of months later or a couple of years later, you realize that Bitcoin still isn't dead and it's still around. And so the second step of the journey might be the obvious reaction, like, why isn't it dead yet? And what's going on there? And at one point in time, you might dig a little deeper and you're like, oh, this is interesting. So you start to see you start to see Bitcoin under a different light. And that's really, I think, where the fun begins and where you start to fall down the rabbit hole. And once you're deep down the rabbit hole, you will have some wow moments, some basically your brain will be on fire all the time. That's that's I think true for most Bitcoiners that have studied this technology for multiple years. They will tell you that there are many of those moments where everything just kind of clicks and Bitcoin is way more interesting than you might think at first. So this is usually how the journey not ends, because I don't think the journey really ends, but that's what you go through as a Bitcoiner from time to time. You have this mind explosions, and it's really quite something to fall down the rabbit hole. So that's not meant to say that everything in the rabbit hole is confusing, but it feels sometimes that you're stuck in an MC Escher painting. So you have to unlearn quite a few things, and it sometimes feels like you're going the wrong way, and some things don't necessarily make sense, but they might make sense in hindsight. I just used this MC Escher illustration to show that Bitcoin can be kind of confusing if you really get into it, and it's not necessarily easy to understand. Just don't get discouraged. It will eventually make sense in time. And many people talked about this. I have here some research from 2017 from Unchained Capital, and they wrote about the blockchain spectrum. I would like to call this the Bitcoin flower, because it nicely shows the different aspects of Bitcoin that you have to understand, or at least get a preliminary understanding of, to really understand what's going on. So you have to dive into cryptography, you have to dive into politics and economics, you have to dive into distributed systems, and it really helps to understand, for example, how BitTorrent works, or it also helps to understand game theory, for example. And there are a bunch of things here listed that really help you to understand Bitcoin, but you kind of need an overview of all of them to have this moment where it really clicks and where Bitcoin makes sense. There's another slide I would like to show you from Block Tower by Ari Paul from 2018. And it's a similar idea. So there are just certain areas that Bitcoin touches. And I think everyone who fell down the rabbit hole had to study some kind of computer science. So you need to make sense of hashes, for example, and the cryptography that Bitcoin uses. So you need to understand public-private keys and so on and so forth. You need to understand the game theory behind it. You need to learn about economics and why Bitcoin accrues value in the first place, and how it is traded and stuff like that. And I think I really like this picture because it already shows that it's an ongoing journey, and it has this spiral nature that no matter where you start, you have to go from topic to topic and you have to dive in a little bit, but you also have to move on and learn the other things. And slowly but surely, those pieces fall into place and Bitcoin will start to make sense. So what I'm trying to say is that the rabbit hole that I'm trying to talk about, it has many entries. So it doesn't matter what your background is. Your background might be in computer science, or it might be in economics, or it might be in trading, or it might be a very different background in physics, for example. We have some physicists that are early Bitcoiners as well. You might just be a very curious person, or you might had to buy Bitcoin to acquire something that is illegal in your jurisdiction. So there are many rabbit hole entry points. And if you're curious enough, you will go on this journey that will lead to a deeper understanding of Bitcoin. And I think what we discovered in the last couple of years is that eventually all roads lead to Bitcoin. And I want to come back to that in a later point. But in general, it seems that if you dig deep enough, Bitcoin is the thing that makes the most sense. So in essence, no matter where your starting point is, all roads lead to Bitcoin. All right. So part 2, Bitcoin's journey. So Bitcoin is a 0 to 1 invention. So we didn't know how to do digital scarcity, and now we know. And Bitcoin was the first one that did digital scarcity without any third parties successfully. And there is a nice piece of writing, which is from 2013, I think, which is called Stage N, Bitcoin Exists. And arguably, that's one of the most important steps, that there was no Bitcoin, and now we have the invention of Bitcoin. But I would point out that there was one point in Bitcoin's history that is even more important, or at least as important. And that was the step from 0 to 1 cents. And I would like to call that stage N, Bitcoin has value. And this is extremely important because the underlying technology that drives Bitcoin and that drives Bitcoin adoption can really begin to work once Bitcoin accrues any sort of value. And of course, the underlying technology I'm talking about is the NGU technology, number go up technology. And we need N to be bigger than 0 for that to work. And for some reason, at some point in time, in like 2010, Bitcoin accrued some value, some sense. And of course, we just had Bitcoin Pizza Day with the famous transaction where Laszlo sold 2 pizzas for, he sold 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas. And ever since, we're in this eternal feedback loop that makes the number go up. So this feedback loop was very well described by Seyfedin Ammous in 2018. And he had in one of his presentations a slide that looked a little bit like this. And in essence, he says that the demand for the store of value, like there is a demand to store value in Bitcoin, which makes the price rise, which means that mining becomes more profitable, which means that more processing power goes to mining, which means the network becomes more secure, which in turn means it's a better store of value, it's a more secure store of value, which makes the demand to store value in Bitcoin rise again. And this is the internal, like the eternal number go up feedback loop that we find ourselves in right now. And Satoshi, being the visionary that he is, he of course knew about this feedback loop. So to quote him, he said that it might make sense just to get some in case it catches on. If enough people think the same way, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it seems that we are currently experiencing the monetarization of this self-fulfilling prophecy. So in essence, Bitcoin is cyclical and went through many phases. And some recent research by Plan B identified these phases, and he identified four phases that Bitcoin went through so far. So the first one was the proof of concept phase. The second one was the payments phase. The third one was the e-gold phase. And the fourth one was the financial asset phase. And it seems like we're heading to a fifth phase. And we don't know yet how this will look like. And as also Daniel and Stefan said in the very beginning, the concept of what Bitcoin is shifted over time. And we might see a shift in Bitcoin's conception again. We just don't know yet what it will be like. But it seems that our understanding of Bitcoin evolves alongside Bitcoin as well. Of course, this isn't necessarily new research that Plan B did. Many things he did was new, but we also had in 2018, Hasu and Nick Carter that published the visions of Bitcoin. They talked about similar things, and Plan B also referenced this in his work. And they identified the different visions that the different viewpoints people had about Bitcoin. So it was also proof of concept, G payments network, darknet currency, and so on and so forth, programmable currency, censorship resistant e-gold. And this is also still evolving. So we can see here again, Plan B's stock to flow across asset model. We can see these phases very nicely by just looking at the monthly Bitcoin price points. We can see those four distinct Bitcoin clusters. And if we plot a regression line through those clusters, we can see that it also nicely lines up with gold and silver if you just look at the market value and the stock to flow value of those. And who knows, maybe the next cluster will form around the one of gold or in between gold and silver. We will see about that. So we can see that Bitcoin comes in waves, and we can see this also in various Bitcoin artworks that artists are working on. So here we see Satoshi Rides the Wave of Change by hodl.rocks. I really like that. If you notice the mountain range in the background, it's actually the price chart of Bitcoin. So it's a very nice touch. And we see also this kind of wavy nature of Bitcoin in the hodl waves that Unchained Capital released in 2018. So we have a chart here, an annotated chart with the data up to 2018. And we see the Genesis hodl, the hodl of 2011. So people that held on to their coins starting in 2011, the great hodl of 2014. So people already caught on to the fact that Bitcoin adoption comes in waves, and they decide to get in and hold on for a certain period and try to sell at the local top, so to speak. And this is the most recent hodl wave charts up to yesterday, so up to March 2020. And I show here also the distribution of the UTXOs. So you can see that almost a third of UTXOs hasn't moved for 2 years. So we have a very solid holder base, and you can also tell that since the top of 2018 at around 19K, 20K US dollars, people started also to hold on to the Bitcoin. And of course, we also have a growing movement of daily, weekly, and monthly stackers, people that auto DCA and just decide to use Bitcoin as their savings technology, and they don't choose to save in US dollars or in euro, but they choose to stack sats and save in Bitcoin instead. So another indicator that Bitcoin comes in waves. I really like this video. It's called Don't Buy Bitcoin, It's Going to Crash by Alex Miller, released in 2015. So the most recent run up to 20K isn't even included in this video. And he goes through the cycles that Bitcoin went through up to 2015. And it's really funny to watch. So he will tell you that just look at Bitcoin. It went from 6 cents to 36 cents, and then it crashed. And then again, it went from 58 cents to $29, and then it crashed again, and then it went from $13 to $213, and then it crashed again, and then it went from $130 to over $1,000, and then it crashed again. So the moral of the story is don't buy Bitcoin because you know it's going to crash again. So Bitcoin is cyclical, and I think all those data points and the research that I just presented to you makes that very obvious. And in essence, we have multiple cyclical things, multiple of those eternal loops that Bitcoin is in. We already talked about the security and price loop that Saifedean showed so nicely in 2018. So in essence, we have like number go up, mining equals profit, number of miners go up, security go up, trust and usage go up, which makes number go up even more. But we also have price and adoption, and it again starts with number go up. And once we reach new all-time highs, we'll get another media hype because Bitcoin is still not dead, and people will talk about it, write about it, and FOMO into it. A new wave of people will get into Bitcoin, and some people that get into Bitcoin will eventually become Bitcoiners because they truly get it and they see that there is some deeper truth hidden in Bitcoin. And all of that will lead to more development, more education, and more hodling, which in turn will make the utility of Bitcoin go up as well, which will make the number go up as well. Development is also cyclical. So whenever a new Bitcoin version is released, the improvements that are planned for the next version are proposed and discussed. Pull requests opened, all is done out in the open. Pull requests are merged, and the new version is released. So in essence, there are many cycles in Bitcoin. We already talked about the security and price cycle, adoption cycles, development cycles. There is also mining, which is cyclical, like the race to find new blocks is very cyclical in nature. Once a valid block is found, the race starts again from the most recent block that was found. And the difficulty adjustment is obviously cyclical based on the number of blocks and the amount of hash power that went into mining them. And the reward eras are also cyclical in nature. Like we're still in the era of Bitcoin where there is an additional mining reward, and we will have those cyclical halving events until the year 2140 approximately. And I'm sure there are many other cyclical things. I'm pretty sure I missed some others as well, but many things in Bitcoin are cyclical. All right. Part 3, I call this circling around a Schelling point, and I want to kind of show you that the personal journey into Bitcoin and the journey of Bitcoin can be interrelated and are interrelated in some interesting ways. So to recap, I told you that all roads eventually lead to Bitcoin, but it's a little bit more nuanced than that, because I think that while getting into Bitcoin and falling down the rabbit hole is a journey, it's a different journey for everyone, and it's a personal journey. And you might find out different things and find different truths and have different entry points, and in turn also slightly different understandings of Bitcoin. And I also think it truly never ends. So I think the rabbit hole is circular. That's also why nobody has found the rabbit hole, like the bottom of the rabbit hole yet. And to understand Bitcoin, you will constantly have to find a new understanding and find a consensus also what Bitcoin is. And I think it's funny and interesting that in essence, both Bitcoiners and Bitcoin nodes, they kind of do the same thing. So we have the Bitcoin nodes that constantly arrive at the consensus. So they constantly arrive at the same chain tip by validating everything they get as an input. And there might be some instances where consensus diverges momentarily, but in the end, it will converge again, and every node will have the same view on Bitcoin. And in the same way, Bitcoiners, they also try to figure out what Bitcoin is, and they arrive at the same point. But some people might have different ideas what Bitcoin is, but in the end, I think the truth, what Bitcoin is, will prevail, and we will all just struggle in the next months and years to truly find out what Bitcoin is. And I think it will be a continuous process as well. So to sum up, getting into Bitcoin, you will have to learn about computer science, investing and trading, economics, game theory, cryptography. And I also believe that this will go round and round, and you will have to learn new things about computer science. For example, if Bitcoin upgrades to Schnorr signatures and other things, you might have some changes in the quote-unquote real world, and some economic realities change. There might be new attack vectors for Bitcoin that we didn't think of yet, and you have to learn more about game theory and stuff like that. And coming full circle, I think there might also be a point in time where some Bitcoiners decide to really go back to the roots, and they will be like, yeah, I've heard of Bitcoin, and the journey went that you bought some, you looked more into it, you understood it more, you went all in, and then suddenly you will have amnesia induced by a boating accident, lose all your Bitcoins, and you can finally, if someone asks you about Bitcoin, tell them, yeah, this Bitcoin thing, I've heard of it, but I don't know much about it. So in essence, if Bitcoin is successful, I think it will disappear. And along the same lines, if Bitcoin is truly successful, Bitcoiners will disappear as well, in the same way that internet people disappeared. You know, everyone uses the internet now. And in the same way also that electricity disappeared, it's just everywhere now. And Bitcoin, I believe, will also be everywhere, and Bitcoiners will be everywhere. You don't need to self-identify as a Bitcoiner anymore. So in essence, if Bitcoin is successful, there won't be Bitcoiners anymore. There will just be normal people using Bitcoin. And I want to close with these two drawings by MC Escher. So the left one should symbolize the very personal Bitcoin journey. You might reach what you think is the height of understanding, but just keep in mind that Bitcoin is evolving and will continue to evolve. So all you can do is just walk around the shelling point of understanding that is Bitcoin, and it might feel that you go up or you go down, but you just walk around this understanding. And the second one is about Bitcoin in general. You can't really tell if the water is going up or down, but Bitcoin comes in waves, and yeah, there will be one point in time where just the waterfall comes and Bitcoin will accrue more and more value, and it will enter a new phase. And it seems that this is just the way it goes. All right, if you want to read about my journey, have a look at 21 Lessons. You can read the book for free online, and you can also buy it on Amazon. And if you want to reach out to me and discuss some of these topics, you can find my contact information on theirgigi.com/contact. All right.